Hello and welcome to Beyond Service live discussions with WorkWave. Here at WorkWave, we hear every day about smaller pest control companies being bought by larger companies, and we work with many of our clients that are either buying companies or selling their own to make the process go smoothly. Have you ever considered if selling your business is the right decision for you? How do you prepare your business to be attractive to potential buyers? Today we have Tom Gibbons, president and owner of F&W Pest Control and Industry, strategist here at WorkWave, on the show to chat about how you can prepare your business for sale. So you said you're in Florida, and I know you're a snowbird. So the burning question for me is, did you make your way to Tampa Bay this past weekend?
No, I was actually somewhere else watching it on like a 20-inch TV set in a hotel
Okay.
room. So
Okay.
I wish,
I know I was,
but
go ahead.
I was happy with the results though.
That was going to be my question. So I was home. I was talking to my dad and my brother, and for everybody in the audience who don't know, I'm Rhode Island native. Tom is Massachusetts. We've talked about sports tons of times. Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, both in the Super Bowl, but not with our team.
Yeah,
And there's a little bit of division up in New England about who's rooting for him and who's not. And I was just curious where Tom's side was. I actually didn't really follow until the end, and then I saw just a little hype video, and I was like, you know what, you just gotta root for him. He was our guy for so many years. You just gotta do it. So
he's the GOAT. You got to root for him,
yeah,
and he pulled it up again.
exactly.
Impressive,
So
impressive.
we're
Yeah,
here talking about selling your business in M&A, and I think Tampa made a huge, great M&A this past off season. But let's move right into actual M&A, our discussion here. All right.
sounds
All right.
good.
Do you want to give a little bit of background on yourself so the audience knows who you are?
Sure, sure. So basically, been in the pest control business my entire life. As I think once I was able to walk, my father put me to work. Cleaning up after termite drilling holes, sweeping up cement dust, and patching and vacuuming, and so it's just kind of a natural progression. Went to work full time in the family business back in '84. Um, my father wanted to retire in the late '90s, so with my brother Jim and Mark, we bought the company in 1999 and have owned F&W since. We're a fourth generation. I'd call us a regional business in the greater Boston area, so we service, all of Massachusetts down to Cape Cod. We go into Rhode Island, out to the middle part of the state. So, been in the industry for a long, long time. Back when I was working for my dad in the mid 90s, there were no software applications to speak of. We were doing scheduling with a dry erase
Oh,
whiteboard.
wow.
We had several, yeah, we had women in the office with IBM Selectric 2 typewriters typing up work orders and statements, and everything was stored on ledger cards.
Hmm.
So I went back to school. I went back to Clark in Worcester and basically learned how to code. And the goal was to start designing an application, client server, SQL Server, Visual Basic that we could use for the family business, just to try to simplify things. Shortly thereafter, I met Mike Ayers, who was the founder of Marathon Data, which is now WorkWave. And Mike and I quickly became friends and decided, instead of being competitors on the software side, that I could bring kind of my industry knowledge and my understanding of the needs of the software side and work with the developers. And kind of basically that was the foundation of PestPack. So I've been fortunate to have worked with Mike and the team for 20 plus years. And then about 12 years ago, Mike came up to demonstrate the executive dashboard to me in my office, and we had lunch. And that conversation kind of led to me starting as a consultant with WorkWave, helping customers get the most out of their application. And it quickly became a full-time position. And I'm still there today as an industry strategist, and love working with the team at WorkWave and helping our customers.
Yeah, that's great. And when I started here at WorkWave, meeting you and just knowing, your background, for me, it was my first time in pest control. I had some experience in field service, but not necessarily pest control. And you've been a great asset to, providing information, as a ton of our customers provide us great information, to help guide us. So we definitely appreciate it, Tom. But I've got my questions. We're going to get into this. You ready? All
Sounds
right,
good.
let's
Let's do
start
it.
with the first question. Really, for the audience who's watching, for the owners out there who are thinking about it, who are thinking, is this the right strategy for my business? Let's go through what are some pros and cons for an owner who's looking to thinking, or even just thinking about, do I sell my business or do I not sell my business? What do you think,
Sure.
Tom?
So for me, having been in the industry for years and years and years, I've never seen an M&A market like it has been the past couple of years. Back when we purchased the company from my dad, I think the multiples were 1x, 1.25x. I mean, and we just saw in the fourth quarter upwards of 4 times revenue, or multiples of EBITDA, which is actually crazy. So it's been a really exciting time in the industry. For me, if you look at like the top PCT top 100, which is kind of always the benchmark, that has changed dramatically just since last year with all the large acquisitions that have happened. So it's kind of an exciting time as an owner. It kind of makes you think like, wow, I've worked all these years, and maybe there's a payday or a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. But at the same time, it's a tough decision because you got a nice little business. If you structured it correctly and have like a really good recurring revenue model, it's really a good source of cash flow. So it's great to get that pot of rainbow at the end, but you also shut off that cash flow faucet, and you got to determine what you're gonna do with the future. So it's a little bit of both. It's been fun to watch. It's exciting. With all the large mergers and acquisitions, I think those mid-sized companies are poised in a really good spot right now. So those guys that are, between maybe $3.5 to $7 million are kind of going to be, in my opinion, probably the next ones that will be sought after. So kind of the regional
Yeah.
players. So it's really exciting. And if you're not at that level yet, it's a really fun time to be in the industry, and it's exciting.
Yeah, I've noticed even just me being here, I've been here almost 5 years at this point. And just talking to some of our customers and, hearing some of the acquisitions that they have, and you hear like sometimes it's just a guy with a route that gets acquired, some small stuff, but then some of the bigger stuff. And I feel like you said, it's hot. There's a lot of activity of recently. We see it coming through our team. We have a data team that helps, with merging data and data transfers and stuff like that. So it does seem like a very interesting time in the industry, right now. So moving on to the next,
A lot of
yeah,
fun.
a lot of fun, right? And a lot of decisions to be made, right? So, and
Absolutely.
exactly like you said, with, you have to make that decision. Are you going to let it go, or you get that nice little revenue stream? I always say to people, I think
Hmm.
it's a little bit funny, but it certainly is true. I always say every year the bugs rise up, right? So how many like businesses out there have that kind of almost like a guarantee? Like you just know it's bugs are not going out of style. They've been around forever, right? It's not like there's a fad and all of a sudden, the industry is going to go in a different direction. Before I worked in field service, I worked for broadcast communications, and I worked for businesses that were just on the way down. And if you have a little side business and you're doing bugs, I mean, it's not like the bugs are going to go away, right?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I mean, last year, the same time I was sitting here in Florida, planning to go back, April 1st, and then COVID hit,
Yeah.
right? And I panicked. I had to get home and kind of get my office set up to work remote, and I just had these visions of just our business just tanking, people getting laid off and unemployment. It was a scary time, and at the end of the year, I mean, 2020 showed us first off we can work remote and adapt quickly. And the second thing is an industry, we had one of our better years. I mean, we had double digit growth in 2020, which, I should probably say that quietly because I know a lot of people are still struggling. But, as an industry, I think really done well. And like you said, bugs are going nowhere.
They're going nowhere.
Mother
Yep.
Nature hates a void.
And yeah, I've heard a lot of similar, information about people doing well. I think that there's certainly areas that aren't doing it so well, and others. And I think people who are diversified are doing okay, if not better than okay. So
Mhm.
let's go on. Let's talk to number two here on my list of questions for you. So
Sure.
preparation in life, always preparation for the show, right? Sometimes it doesn't go well, but you know what? You try. So when you're preparing for selling, whether you're going to sell now or you're maybe just thinking about it, what are some best practices for owners out there that they should be doing regardless that you think, whether or not they're going to sell or not, things that maybe they should just be doing, and then if the opportunity arises, they're in a good position?
Yeah, so great question. So I think, a lot of that's kind of knowing the KPIs and really what is your business model? Are you going after commercial, residential? Is it a mix? And you should know those numbers, if you don't have them immediately, but you should be able to get them pretty quickly. Most guys I know them off the top of their head. So what's your revenue mix? Um, you know, Residential versus commercial, what's recurring, what's one-time services. So, if you're thinking about selling in the future, I think first off, you really need to look at the recurring revenue model. The big push in the industry, probably the past 5 years that I've seen, is what I call the Netflix model, where people kind of separate the monthly billing aspect of it with their clients, and then the services like no charge preventative services. So I can invoice a customer, $50 a month and do quarterly service. And people have gotten used to that model, the subscription model. We're doing it all the time with Netflix, Amazon Prime, your gym memberships,
Mm-hmm.
and the industry is really adapted to that. If you haven't started to do that yet with your business, it's certainly something I would highly and strongly suggest you look at. It's the future, and it really helps with the cash flow, and it's what the acquirers are looking for, and it's what they're doing. So the more you can kind of align yourself with what the big players and the acquirers are doing, I think that's going to help you.
Yeah.
Another piece of that is obviously knowing your P&L and L and your balance sheet, controlling costs, making sure that your wages for your employees are in line with industry norms. So just kind of really knowing what the starting numbers are, and just work on, for us, everything is about, selling recurring services and credit cards or ACH payments. I don't want to extend credit to anybody anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. You talked a little bit about the Netflix model or the approach, and you're right. I mean, for me, I'm a consumer, and as a consumer, it's easy to just say, okay, yeah, an expense that you're okay with, that on a monthly basis you're just comfortable with, and just having that like peace of mind that you can just say, hey, I got a problem, and you can just call somebody up. You don't have to worry about like finding a new person or a new company or a schedule or any of that stuff. I think it's good for both the consumer and then obviously, like you said, for businesses to just have that regular model and that regular stream coming through. So definitely a good point.
Yeah, I mean, for us being in the Northeast, we're always a very seasonal
Mhm.
business. So when we moved to this model, I mean, we just have this steady income, steady stream of cash flow month in and month out that really, we used to get this big bell curve, in the wintertime. So we'd be doing crazy amount of revenue, come through the summer. And then the minute like December, January, we're running to the bank to borrow money to meet payroll. I mean, so this model has stopped all that, which is, I can't say enough about it. And if people haven't adopted it yet, it's definitely worth taking a look at. And PestPack can make it easy to do.
Yeah. So let's now think about a business owner who's thinking about selling, right? So they're on the cusp, they're thinking about selling. Um, I gotta imagine that this has got to be overwhelming just to just sit back and think about, okay, well, what do I really need to do? So for those out there who don't even know where to start, where would you basically point them towards to, hey, this is this is the things you should do just to get the thing rolling?
Yeah, so it's all about detail. So, that's the first thing any acquirer, or if you're going to go bring your business to market, I mean, they're going to want to know, what do your sales look like, what's your P&L look like, what's your balance sheet, what's your revenue mix, some of the things we just spoke about, right? The more you can prepare for that and have that available and cleaned up in advance is going to be key. Um, you know, you'll want to get kind of an evaluation as a starting point. Where am I at today? Are there things that I can do to improve my business, make it more sellable or more attractive to potential buyers? And I personally think, you should probably consult an expert for that. So there's accounting firms, business brokers, investing banking firms that can help with all that. Two folks that I know really well and have known for a long time would be Dan Gordon with Wealth Depot. He's a great resource for small to mid-sized businesses that are considering marketing it. and the other one is Paul Gianamore with the Potomac Group. So, me personally, I would probably contact one or both of those guys and just kind of feel out. They're going to give you a good idea of what you need to be looking at. They're going to tell you, what kind of numbers you have, and both can, work with you to get that initial evaluation. It may not be time now. You may get the evaluation back and say, you know what, that's not the number I had in my head to retire on. Maybe you got to work another 5 or 10 years. And then having them both there, knowing what the market's doing and what the multiples are, is extremely helpful, because they can tell you if they see things changing for the better or for worse. I've had friends where it's been a 10-year process to sell their business, and I've had other friends that have sold it in 6 months.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of what works, but definitely talking to a professional would help.
Yeah, it was back when we were in Baltimore. Pest World was in Baltimore that year, and I remember I was at the bar afterwards in the hotel, and that was the first time that I met a broker. And it was just a fascinating conversation to sit there and just talk to this guy who was, his business was just connecting other businesses, right? Connecting those small guys to the big
Yeah.
guys, and basically a matchmaker, right? So
That's what they are. It's like Match.com.
exactly. So it was just mind blowing to me to even think that that was even, I don't know. I mean, sometimes you kind of come in and you have some expectations, and then you just realize that there's just a lot to all of this. It's not just out there and, checking traps and, making sure your techs are out running around, but there's a lot of, additional things and aspects to the business out there that are,
There's a lot of nuances to pest
yeah.
management, for
Yeah.
sure.
And then,
Anybody that's in the industry knows
right,
that.
right. So now the
Yeah.
two people that you
So,
just
so
Yeah, the two people that you just mentioned, I don't know if there's going to be any show notes or anything like that, but if we can get those together, we'll, get those in front of some people just in case.
yeah, what I can do is I can include those later on Facebook. I'll attach their contact information in the link, and both great guys. You do well with either one. I like them both. So, definitely good help. One thing I want to point out that happened to me personally when we bought the company from my father is that you also have to consider some of the tax situation that you're currently in.
Mhm.
So back when my dad owned it, we were a C corp, which means that, whatever profits at the end of the year were there, you'd take those out. Those would be taxed at the corporate level, and those would then go to your personally, the shareholders, and then you get taxed again. So there was a double taxation issue. And that became very apparent back when my dad sold the business. He was looking at, maybe 40 cents on the dollar that he'd walk away
Uh,
from. So one of the first things my brothers and I did is we converted to an S corp. So it changes the tax event, as opposed to being a double taxation issue, it was a single taxation issue at that point. And there was a look back. So I think you have to wait 5 or 7 years when you change from a C to an S corp. But we did it immediately. So we've been an S corp ever since 1999. So we should be in a good shape if and when the day comes for us, that we don't have some of the issues that my dad was facing.
I'll be completely honest with you. A lot of that stuff went over my head. Don't get me started on taxes. I just finished my own
It's
taxes.
that time of year.
My mom does taxes for a living, but I started doing my own a few years ago, and it's just I can't imagine what it's like from a business perspective. But anyway, speaking of, let's talk about some of the finances. So, what factors should be considered when determining the value of a business?
So I think it's really, what's your revenue mix look like? So I've seen guys that, think they got a business worth all kinds of crazy money and they're going to get the multiples that we're seeing, but they're 70% one-time services. And that's not what buyers are looking for. Or they might have a big, ancillary service that they provide, like Christmas light decorations. That's another one that most of the big players are not interested in purchasing that kind of stuff. So I think, you know, focusing on core pest control, and by that I mean pests, termite, bed bugs, nuisance wildlife. That's really kind of what potential buyers are looking for. And obviously, the more recurring revenue, the better. They're going to look at your numbers. They're going to look at your customer mix. They have business models that they build out. They do their analysis, and that basically it shows them what their return on investment is going to look like. And that's going to factor into the sale price.
Okay. And then just kind of keeping in that same category, so we actually have a question about, the mix, and you touched upon that a little bit. Is there a particular mix that you recommend?
For For me personally, I think, we for years we chased commercial because we felt that was kind of a better
Yeah.
aspect. I personally have kind of changed my mind on that. Where we're targeting residential right now. The churn rate is a lot less on residential for us. The profit margins are higher than it is on commercial. I mean, we've all had commercial accounts where, somebody comes in for $2 less a month and they're going to dump you and go with this other guy to save $2.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening in the residential market like it does in the commercial. And actually, know people that have sold off the commercial side of their business and gone 100% residential. So that's the one we're targeting right
Okay.
now.
Yeah. That kind of makes sense. I think as a consumer, I think a lot of, for me, we look at reviews, right? Everybody goes online and looks at the reviews and they're looking for quality, and spending an extra couple bucks for the quality, I think is, important for a lot of consumers out there. So I kind of, I can connect the dots there. Um,
Yeah, I think 2020, Rick, kind of proved that too with COVID. I mean, we have a lot of our commercial customers that unfortunately didn't make it or highly unlikely they'll
mhm.
reopen. Yet we still showed growth, in a scary market. And I think the residential is really kind of what pulled that through for us.
Now, also to kind of go on to the finances, we talk about mix, but what about improving the value, right? So if somebody, whether it's adjusting their mix or maybe some other things, what are some tips you think that a company can do to improve their value from where they are right now?
Yeah, so I think, auto pay, credit card, for years as an industry, we extended credit to customers all the time. And I think it became apparent maybe 10 years ago that we just didn't want to do that anymore. So, you know, putting people on auto pay, having credit cards or ACH automatically billed is a huge part. Again, buyers like that aspect of it. Um, it just reduces your collection efforts, your day sales outstanding gets better. So that's certainly one. On the other side of the balance sheet, I think looking at your expenses. So, are your salaries with your employees in line with the industry norms? Are there things you can do to make that bottom line look better to potential buyers? Because that's what they're going to look at. They're going to look at your P&L and your balance sheet. They're going to figure out what you're doing or running through your business personally, pull that out to kind of get a normal number. So the more you can kind of know where that stuff's buried and pull that out in advance is going to help.
You talked a little bit about the industry norm. Any recommendations on where to go find that industry norm? I know what your answer is, but I'm
Yeah.
teeing you
So
up, Tom.
so first off, so either one of the two guys that I mentioned earlier,
Right.
Dan or Paul, can kind of help look at a P&L pretty quickly and tell you if you're out of line. The other thing that I always liked for years was National Pest Management Association. Every few years comes out with their operating ratio surveys, and that's a good way to kind of benchmark yourself against other people in your market. So they'll break it up by Northeast, Southeast, Southwest, that kind of stuff. So I can see, what somebody else in the Northeast, what their labor rates are, on their P&L, So that's usually the biggest number for a pest control company is
Yeah.
labor. That's your biggest cost, and behind that would be in your materials. So,
That's the exact.
but either looking at that ratio or
We were having this conversation yesterday. Literally, we were talking about what are the
yeah,
top three and what percentages they would be, and I said, I'm pretty sure
oh, it's
it's
funny.
one, two, three, the exact order that you gave. So
Yep, yep, yep.
so now we talked earlier. You're in a family business, so I think a lot of people who start pest control really are in that family business, or it's some friends or family, or it's how it started, right? And a lot of them grow. Some of them, not so much, but having that family connection to your business, what are some challenges you think and some common things that maybe you should take into consideration, for those out there who have a family business who are looking to move on?
Yeah, so we all know the family business aspect of it. When it's good, it's a beautiful thing. And, it's like this beautiful orchestra that works together. And then there's bad days when it's the worst sounding thing in the world. And I've been part of both.
Wait,
And
Tom.
we're
So,
fortunate we're in a good place right now.
which instrument are you in this orchestra?
Yeah,
Are
well,
you,
that varies from day to day. Um, so I think part of the family business, you tend to end up with a lot of nepotism, if you will. There's family members that are there that may not necessarily, or maybe shouldn't be there,
Uh-huh.
or their spouses on the payroll, or children on the payroll, or cars on the payroll, buried in the fleet. So those are all part of the family aspect of it, and that's normal. But again, if you're looking to sell, those are things that potential buyers will want to break out and figure out, what's the true bottom number look like without all those other expenses buried in there.
Yeah, yeah. And it could also be, for anybody who, family business, or even if it's not a family business, if you started the business and, you've grown the business, there's like a little bit of an emotional attachment sometimes, right? You built it, it's your baby,
Mm-hmm.
So any tips for people who maybe are thinking that way?
So a really good friend of mine, Mark O'Hara, told me this. He said, he owned Anderson Pest Control out in Chicago, great guy. And he said, Tom, you gotta work on your business, not in your business. And that kind of just it resonated with me. Sometimes you get so wrapped up in the day-to-day operations that you got to step back and look at the big picture and say, hey, what's this business really all about? And really focus on running it like a business as opposed to a little mom and pop operation.
Yeah, yeah. So let's also talk about just outside of family, just your team, right? So you have your business, you got your people in the office, you got your people out in the field, all together you're a team, right? What are some things that you can do to strengthen your team and make sure that you're basically showing that your business is a nicely tight, solid operation?
Yeah, so again, great question. So, most of these acquisitions that happen, they usually transition the ownership out within the first year or so afterwards. So what they'll look for is they want to make sure that, the company is structured to continue on after the owner's gone. So, do you have a service supervisor or sales manager, somebody running operations, your office or call center managers? These are all strong pieces to make sure that there's a supporting cast to keep the business going after the ownership is out of the picture. So that's part of it. So making sure you get that team there, those people are well compensated, is going to be a key part of this.
Yeah. I think also another thing to think about here, part of, you have this attachment to your team and to the business that you built, and a lot of people put in, there's history to the business that they built, and they built a
Mhm.
culture, and they've made a presence within a community. So how much of like the history of a business, how much of the culture of the business and the connection to the community do you think is considered when buyers are looking at, potential acquisitions?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. So I think years ago, probably not so much. I think now with the current group that's doing most of the acquisitions, it's a key part of it. So kind of being able to tell your company story adds value to the sale price. What's your history? Where'd you come from? How'd you get started? How's it financed? What makes you unique in the marketplace? Those are all part of what go into calculating that value
Hmm.
when they do the evaluations. Do you have a good reputation in the marketplace? So we pride ourselves being fourth generation. We pride the reviews that we have on Google. We also track our employees' reviews at the technician level. And, if something comes in that wasn't good, I mean, we jump all over that because it's our reputation. And I told people years ago, I want to be able to walk down the sidewalk and meet a customer on the street and not have to hide from them. I want to offer a good service, and I want to, I want to treat customers the way I treat my family. My mom and dad call it. How would they get treated? So that's kind of what we try to instill, and I think that's important to potential buyers. Does that culture exist there? Or is it just, hey, it's a job, I spray my bugs and I
Right.
move on? And I don't want that with our team. I want people to be passionate about what they're doing and be passionate about their customers. And I actually had a good conversation with one of the guys that works for me last week, you know giving me background. We lost a couple of customers to COVID, and I hadn't taken that into consideration through this whole pandemic, and it kind of hit home. And it's like, these are my customers, and we're talking about price increases. Oh, we can't do this with Mrs. Smith because she just lost her husband and she's barely hanging on. It's like, so, that's part of the culture. And I think that has a lot of value.
Yeah, yeah. That's a number of things to consider. I think also a thing that I noticed because we see a lot of M&A activity, we see companies who are using Pest Pack who get purchased by others that are using Pest Pack, and then some that are coming in and some that are going out. And I've noticed that a lot of times, probably more than I expected, that the brand and the name is actually kept within that group, right? So even though the company is bought in, the brand and the presence and the culture that they've already established, they're not throwing it away and just labeling it the parent company, but they're keeping those names and carrying them forward. I've noticed that quite a bit, probably more than I expected.
Yeah, I think that's a change from years ago, because I mean, years ago you'd see these acquisitions happen by the big national companies, and 2 weeks later it was rebranded as the national brand. And I think people realize now the importance of those regional brands, and
Mhm.
a lot of these big acquirers, they're keeping those now, at least for a period of time.
Yeah, definitely it seems like for a period of time, and I think it really comes down to that culture aspect that we were just talking about, right? The culture is
Hmm.
already established, it's already there. Why disrupt it? You got the great company that you've just acquired, and it adds to the larger the parent company. But why rock the boat with the culture that's already been created? I think I've seen,
Sure. I mean, likelihood if they acquired you, you were running a good business, you were profitable.
Mhm.
They liked the model, and they realize that, and they typically hang on to that for a while.
So we're touching a lot upon customer service, and actually the last session that we did was really around customer service and how you're interacting with customers. So how do you think customer service and retention and reputation, it's a lot of the stuff that we're talking about right now, impacting the sale?
Yeah. So great question too. So I'm a strong believer in reviews. I think that really drives everything, because when your customers can go out on social media and give you a review almost immediately after the service. I mean, that's how we all shop now. I mean, I'm a big fan of Amazon Prime. I
Oh
go
yeah,
on there,
yeah.
and the first thing I check off is that filter for 4 stars and up. I don't even want to look at the junk, right? And then I look at the reviews, and I'll read the bad ones along with the good ones. And then I make my decision on my purchase. And I think consumers do the same thing with pest control services, So as opposed to just kind of being a commodity out there, which for years it was looked at, now with the review aspect of it, people can actually get in there and see the experience that people have had. So with our company, we encourage the reviews. We encourage our technicians to ask for reviews. Um, you don't always get perfect ones, but I think, the fact that customers can see, or prospects can see that you're human and you react to these and respond to them and try to do the right thing is key. So we're big on that. So business reviews on Google. We do internal reviews with our sales member, our not a sales member, our service team, to make sure that they're offering grade A service to our customers. And I think that feeds into things like retention. If you're doing great service, you're going to keep those customers. That's what we see.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think about that, but you're right. I mean, social media and reviews, there's no place to really hide it. It's out there. It's public knowledge,
It sure is.
right? So,
You better be on your game.
yeah. Well, Tom, let's see. Is there anything you think we didn't cover, or any last tips that you think you'd like to throw out to the audience?
So yeah, so I actually reached out to a bunch of my friends that have sold over the past couple of years. Great information from their perspective, what they would do, or you know key takeaways. So I think the first one, focus on your core business. So we talked about that a little
Mhm.
earlier. If you're in the pest control business, focus on your pest control business. Some of the ancillary things that I see people break off into, I've seen guys go become electricians or plumbers or get into the whole home services thing. Acquirers want to buy pest control companies because they like the recurring revenue model. So focus on that. Be able to show good growth. I mean, that's the other key factor that these acquirers look for. If you've been flat, and I think Dan Gordon, who I recommended earlier, once said, there's companies out there that are lifestyle businesses. So they kind of plateau, they get to a sales level that they're comfortable at, they live comfortable lives. They don't want to go out and start creating sales teams or marketing. That's cool, but I mean, acquirers are going to want to see some growth to drive the value of the business up. Recurring revenue is key, so certainly focus on that recurring revenue model that we talked about earlier. If you're not doing separating billing from service, I would one key takeaway to take away from the session, I would do that. Um, so I think looking at termite, it's all about retention rates. Are you working your termite renewals? I was at one guy's place and he was in the 60-70% range, and then I went back and checked mine and we were in the low 90s. So it just goes to show what can happen by having a good renewal retention program in place. And it didn't take long to help him turn that around and see his rates go way up. Just got to work them a little harder.
Mm-hmm.
Acquirers are going to want to see your retention rate at the 2+ year mark, so be able to know what that number is. They're going to want 3 years worth of financial information available, so P&Ls, balance sheets, data models that they'll build out based on that information. They're going to want to see things like revenue by employee, tech production rates, employee ratios, so full-time employees, how many office staff do you have to technicians in the field, and what does that total revenue per employee look like? So those are all key numbers to keep in mind. And then finally, payments. What does your days sales outstanding number look like? So when you go to that credit card or ACH model, it's amazing. It goes from like 30, 35 days down to like 1 or 2 days, which is great for cash flow and your receivables. So certainly focus on that.
Yeah. So we have one last question, and then we'll see if there's any questions from the audience. I think it's a theme. We always like to end in a software question.
Amazing.
It's amazing how it works out that way. So just thinking about software, right? So I mentioned earlier we have a data service team, and you're in one software. You're maybe being looking at being acquired. Is there anything that you should think about when you're looking at your software in terms of selling your business? Is there anything that you recommend, or things that you would that you even look at when you're looking at, okay, well, I'm picking this software because I think this is going to help me in terms of somewhere down the road, whether it's with the dashboards, or whether it's with the reports that you're talking about, some of those metrics that you're looking for. I don't know. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, so certainly having a platform where all that stuff is readily accessible is key. I'll tell an interesting story. Probably 10 years ago now, we looked at acquiring a little local competitor of ours in our marketplace, and we set up a meeting. And the guy was nice enough to host us at his home, so we showed up there and eat coffee and donuts. And my two brothers and I went in there and met with the seller, and his system was in 3x5 index card file with cards in there, and no idea what he had for recurring revenue versus one times. And I think three of us left there, and it's like, yeah, we're going to pass on this. He wasn't looking for crazy money, but the fact that he didn't have a system or could show us legit numbers so we could do our due diligence was a little frightening for us. So having a system that lets you get those numbers out of your data fairly quickly and efficiently is key. I think we've done a lot of things at WorkWave over the past few years with the report writer and our new business intelligence platform that we developed, where you have that at your fingertips. It's up to date. It's current. Those are key. And the other thing I've heard through the grapevine over the years, I've been fortunate to be in the position I'm in, where I deal with some very big customers that are active in the acquisition piece of it, and they like the fact that some of these mid-sized, smaller companies are on PestPac because it's an easier transition to them or for them when they look at data migrations. So it's going from PestPac to PestPac is a lot easier than going from 3x5 index cards or QuickBooks into a PestPac, because a lot of the big players, as you know, Rick, use them.
This is my
All right,
my 3x5 index cards.
there you go.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, our data service team converts from different softwares, but always PestPac to PestPac is like the easiest. It just makes sense that way.
Absolutely.
So we got some comments coming through. I think they're mostly comments. I don't know how many questions we have in here, but people saying, reviews, and they're agreeing with our comments about reviews and how those are important and how they're public. Um, Also, some talk about the metrics that you were talking about, and that which ones that are primary. So I wonder if maybe when you post that information on Facebook, maybe if there's a couple like primary, just for reminders, so people will, maybe they didn't write them down. So
Sure.
we can do that. And then some positive stuff here about my hair, I think, right?
Yes.
And your hair. I don't know, Tom. You always have good hair.
I got a haircut
Did
yesterday
you
just for
really?
this. So
I'll tell
yeah, oh,
a little
yeah.
secret. I've been cutting my hair for almost a year now. My own hair. It's a byproduct of COVID.
Actually, Lynn did mine last summer, and she did a pretty good job. I
Oh,
was
really?
impressed.
You know what's
Yeah.
funny is you would think that the front would be the easiest part because you could see it, but I actually think the front is the hardest part to do. I don't know why.
The front's the hardest part for me because it's getting thin.
All right. I'm just gonna end there. I'm not. All right. Well, thank you, Tom. Thanks for spending the time with us, as always. And just to look forward to the next session that we do. The next session is going to actually be on. This is kind of good. This is interesting. So the next session that we're going to do is growing your business, leads, sales. Really focus on that part. We actually do an industry survey. WorkWave does an industry survey. And one of the key pieces trends that we saw in the survey, and I think this is a big byproduct of COVID, is how do I grow my business? How do I get more sales? How do I upsell? So I think a lot of people out there are looking for tips and tricks there. Just because word of mouth and contact with customers is a little bit different than it used to be. So that'll be the next subject for our next session. So a little, when is that one, Amanda?
We
A
don't
month
have
from now?
exactly, we don't have exact date, but we have one last minute question. And,
Oh, we do?
So yeah, so just a last minute. So let's squeeze that in if we can.
Okay. I guess this is a
Sure.
question for you, Tom. How did you become educated in running a business? Did you go to school, or was this family that taught you?
Um, Both. So my dad is my biggest mentor. I can't thank him enough for how he's trained me over the years. Just great morals and ethics, and kind of instilled that in our entire family. I did go to school, took basic business accounting practices and that kind of stuff, but most of it was just the school of hard knocks. Also, having friends in the industry that are willing to open up and share. There's a lot of great groups out there. I was part of Lloyd Smigell's group probably back in the late 90s. Met a lot of interesting people and long-lasting friends in that group, that I'm still very close with. And then, guys I can call on that have sold their businesses or run extremely large businesses that are very open and willing to share, is key. And then on the software side, I love to consume anything around software. So, there's some good stuff like on the report writer, as far as training goes on Exago's website, that I learned the report writer from them. Some of the software programming stuff. There's a site, LinkedIn Learning. It used to be lynda.com, is a great resource for, if you want to get into some of the reporting or data analytics stuff. That's a good source too.
Yeah, I think that a mix of school and experience is always the best. Um, you know,
Yeah. I've made a lot of mistakes over the
and
years,
that's the
and
best way to
just
learn,
don't
Tom,
duplicate
right?
those. It is.
Right?
Yeah, you try things, it didn't
Yeah.
work, you go back, you rethink it, come back with another plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
School gives you a little bit of guidance, and then you go out there and you do it, and you
Yep.
fail
Yep.
because that happens, and then you learn from
Yeah.
failing.
I mean, school's a
Yeah,
good. Yep. Yeah. School's a good foundation, but it's the school of hard knocks.
exactly. All right. Well, thanks for spending the time with us, Tom, and thanks everybody for watching. And again, early March, we're going to talk about leads and growing your business, sales, that aspect of the whole, um, you know, business aspect for you guys. So tune in March.
Sounds good.